If you ask us to do a duet, it's an extension of your career and the end of mine. So let's not.
At 89 years old, Robert Redford finally says what Hollywood never expected him to reveal. He leans back, that sun-kissed grin still shining beneath silver hair, and the studio goes silent. The host pushes him with a teasing smile. Robert, which actresses tempted you the most? The audience freezes. Redford laughs, shakes his head, and lifts his glass like a man ready to spill decades of secrets. Let's just say, he begins slowly, there were 7 women who almost made me break every rule I ever wrote. The crowd erupts, but Redford's eyes are already drifting into memories he's held onto for 50 years. Who were these 7? What moments nearly crossed the line? Stay right here, because he's finally naming them. The first name he speaks is Jane Fonda, his co-star from Barefoot in the Park. Just saying her name pulls a younger version of him back onto those old New York sets. Jane, he says, was fire, sharp, funny, brilliant, and unbelievably beautiful. He remembers the way she would tilt her head when she teased him, the way her eyes locked onto his with that spark of conviction she carried even in her 20s. They were both young, still carving out their place in Hollywood, but Jane already had that rare combination of sex appeal and intellect that hit a man like a punch to the ribs. There were days, he admits, when she would look at me in a scene, and I'd think, if she does that again, I'm not making it through this take. The chemistry between them was so powerful, critics praised it for decades. But Redford insists none of it was manufactured. You can't fake sparks like that, he says. They happen. And with Jane, they happened every single time. He remembers glances that lasted a heartbeat too long, laughter that didn't belong to the script, and moments between takes when she flashed him that mischievous smile that said she knew exactly what was going through his mind. They never crossed lines, but sometimes the longing was sweeter because they didn't. If the timing had been different, he says, that movie would have been a lot hotter than the censors back then could handle. Then his grin shifts, becomes sly as he remembers Meryl Streep. With her, temptation wasn't loud. It was subtle, dangerous, and impossible to predict. Meryl, he says, could undo you without touching you. She had the uncanny ability to disappear into a scene so completely that he often forgot where the script ended and reality began. You'd be standing there, ready to deliver your line, and she'd look at you in this way that made you forget there were 50 people watching. And she knew what she was doing. One moment she was Shakespearean intensity. The next, she'd floor him with a sly smile that hinted at some private joke she wasn't sharing. He found himself staring at her longer than he should have, trying to figure out whether she was flirting or just becoming the character so deeply that he fell into the performance with her. That ambiguity, the mystery of it, was intoxicating. Part of me wanted to lean in and see what happened if I stopped acting, he says, chuckling softly. But sometimes the fantasy is stronger than the reality. Still, he admits that one look from Meryl Streep could have undone years of discipline. And maybe, he says, she did, in ways no one else ever noticed. The next name almost startles him with its intensity. Faye Dunaway. She wasn't fire or mischief. She was ice-sharp, breathtaking, and untouchable in a way that made men both terrified and mesmerized. With Faye, he says, you didn't just act with her, you survived her. She had an aura that preceded her, a mysterious presence that wrapped itself around every room she entered. She didn't chase attention. Attention chased her. Her eyes were a weapon, cold, precise, knowing. One look, and Redford often felt like she'd read the last chapter of his life story before he even reached the first page. There were moments, he confesses, when I wondered what would happen if I let my guard down around her. But part of her power was that you didn't. She was temptation incarnate, but the kind that stayed out of reach by design, a beautiful test of willpower that Redford admits he nearly failed more than once. Then his voice shifts again, grows gentler, softened by something like longing. The name Natalie Wood brings a different kind of memory, one filled with fragility and fire intertwined. Natalie, he says quietly, was unforgettable. She wasn't loud or commanding. She drew people in by simply being present. Her vulnerability made you want to protect her, but the steel beneath that softness made you admire her strength just as deeply. Redford remembers how fully she listened, how intensely she focused on you when you spoke. Conversations with her felt cinematic, even when they were about nothing at all. She had this ability, he says, to make a simple moment feel like it mattered. She carried light and shadow in equal measure, and that duality made her irresistible. Redford sighs, as if feeling the weight of the years between now and then. Some people you get over, he says. Natalie wasn't one of them. A spark returns to his eyes when he mentions Barbra Streisand, his partner in the iconic film The Way We Were. He laughs before he even begins. Barbra, he says, was a storm. Brilliant, hilarious, tender, overwhelming. In all the best ways, her voice could stop every thought in his head, even when she was just humming between takes. And her gaze? That was something else entirely. Barbra would catch me staring, he admits, and she'd give me this tiny smile that said she knew exactly what I was thinking. Their chemistry on screen wasn't just acting, it was truth, riding on top of professionalism. She pushed him, challenged him, demanded the best from him. You couldn't coast around Barbra, he says. She forced you to bring everything you had. And he loved it. The temptation between them was subtle, but powerful. A constant undercurrent beneath every scene they shot. Some days, he says, I thought if I let myself fall too far, I wouldn't come back. He laughs as he remembers Catherine Deneuve, the French goddess who seemed to exist slightly above the rest of the world. Catherine didn't walk, he says, his smile widening. She floated. She had that rare kind of beauty that made people forget to breathe. It wasn't just her face, her figure, or her poise. It was her aura, that quiet mystery she carried like a fragrance that lingered after she left the room. Redford admits that even he, the consummate professional, couldn't keep his composure around her. She could read a grocery list in French, he says, and it would sound like a secret meant only for me. The way she looked at him, holding his eyes a second longer than she needed to, made him stumble over his lines. He chuckles at the memory, shaking his head. I stumbled more around her, he says, than in my first year of acting. Then, more quietly, he adds, she could undo a man with silence, and she undid me more than I like to admit. And then there's Sophia Loren. The name alone makes him pause, his voice turning almost nostalgic. He never shared a scene with her, never rehearsed a line, never acted opposite her. But she lived in his imagination for years. Sophia wasn't a woman, he says. She was an event. Her laughter could fill a room before she even walked in. Her presence turned ordinary moments into spectacle. Redford watched her from afar, captivated by her warmth, her magnetism, her timeless allure. She had a way of making every man feel like the only one in the room, he recalls softly. Then, after a long pause, he adds, some fantasies stay sweeter because they never happen. Sophia was one of the great what-ifs of my life. Robert Redford leans back, that familiar grin lighting up his face. I behaved like a gentleman, he says, pausing with a playful spark in his eyes. But that doesn't mean I didn't think about misbehaving. 7 women, 7 legends, 7 temptations that became timeless memories. He laughs softly. At my age, the truth doesn't hurt anymore. It just makes for better stories. If you loved this glimpse into Hollywood's golden past, Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold legends and unforgettable lives. Thanks for watching.